Hello everyone, in honor of Purim, I thought I'd deal with a question that's not Purim Torah, but you may think it is, and that is, why don't we have 2 days of Purim in the Diaspora like we have for every other Yom Tov? Now, I'm not talking about the 2-day Purim in Israel, because that is very common. The Gemara says that Chizkiah celebrated 2 days of Purim in Tveria, and Ravasi celebrated 2 days of Purim in Hutzal, because he didn't know if it was an in-walled city from the time of Yehoshua bin Nun, or not, as per the Pesach of the Rambam, Mir shehi safek ve'en yadui meitam mukefet choma b'yemot Yehoshua bin Nun. If there's a city that you don't know if it was walled or not from the time of Yehoshua, this is the halacha. You basically celebrate 2 days of Purim, and you make the bracha on the first day. Why? Hu'yavahuzman kriya lerov ha'olam. Namely, it's a safek, a doubt, so we incorporate the rule of rov, namely majority. The majority of the world is not enrolled from the time of Yehoshua bin Nun, so therefore they read on the 14th with a bracha. But because of the safek, they read it also on the 15th. Now you may say safek de Rabbanan lekula. Why don't we just go lekula? Explains the Ran on the Reef that if we would have done that, then what would happen was nimtza piturot b'shnehem. You would say safek de Rabbanan lekula. We don't know if it's the 14th or the 15th, so let's just forget about it all. And indeed, that's impossible. The Mishnah Lamelech, as well as the Turei Even, both explain that you cannot say Safek de Rabbanan Lekula at the price of totally negating a mitzvah. So I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about why don't we have a 2-day Purim outside of Israel like we do for every other Yom Tov, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. So you may think this question is funny, but it's not. The Mishnah says that they used to send out messengers from Yerushalayim, where they decided when Rosh Chodesh was, to the various cities, not every month, but when it was relevant. They sent it out for Nisan because it's Pesach, they sent it out for Tishrei for all the Yom Tovim, and within that Mishnah it says that they sent it out for Kislev for Chanukah and Adar for Purim. So obviously it's important to know the right date. If that's the case, since the whole reason for the 2-day Yom Tov isn't because we didn't know then when Rosh Chodesh was, it could have been a 29-day month or a 30-day month. Purim, Adar, Chanukah, Kislev is no different. They used to send out messengers for then. As the Turei Even explains, you have to know when Purim or Chanukah is, not because there's any Isser Malacha, you ought to use your car, but rather, number one, Pesumei Nisa Chashiv Tvei. It's important to publicize the miracle on the right day. And number two, you may do brachot levatala. You may say the 3 brachot on the menorah or the 3 brachot before Megilla reading on the wrong day. You got brachot levatala. So from this perspective, why aren't there 2 days of Purim in the diaspora like we do for every other Yom Tov? If it was important enough to send shlichim from the Beis Din to tell them when Purim is, then it should follow that since they didn't get everywhere, we should have a 2-day Purim. Well, quite frankly, it never happened. The Gemara in Erechin Daf Yud talks about the days you finish Hallel, and it says the 8 days of Chanukah. It doesn't say 9 days of Chanukah. The Gemara there then says in Chutz La'aretz, it's more days we finish Hallel because of the 2nd day Yom Tov, and again it says only 8 days of Chanukah. The one that said it was Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzadok. And the Gemara in Sanhedrin Daf Kavav Amud Aleph says Rabbi Shimon ben Yehotzadok were one of the rabbis that were in charge of deciding when Rosh Chodesh was. So they were still Mekadesh the Chodesh al pi ha'ri'iyah, namely via witnesses, and they didn't do a 2-day Yom Tov for Chanukah, and obviously not for Purim as well. So from this perspective, the Minchat Chinuch could determine Purim afshuhum b'divrei Kabbalah k'divrei Torah. Even though Purim is on a higher level than Chanukah, it's not a derabanan, a rabbinic, but it's divrei Kabbalah. It's actually a Yom Tov written in one of the 24 books of the Bible. Still, my question is, why not? This is not my question. This question was asked through the ages. The Abu Dhram asks this question in the name of the Bal Ha'itim regarding Chanukah, and he asks this question in the name of the Mishmeret Moadot that I never heard of regarding Purim, and their various answers given. And I'd like to go through a few of them today, and God willing, we'll continue in our next segment. The Pri Chadash says very simply, I'll tell you why there isn't 2 days of Purim, because Purim and Chanukah are not biblical. In his words, when it's a rabbinic holiday, we don't do this 2-day Yom Tov thing. When it's a biblical holiday, we do. That's the answer the Abu Dhram gives the name of the Bal Ha'itim, as well as the Mishmeret HaMoadot, both regarding Chanukah and regarding Purim. Chas Chinuch is quick to point out that if indeed they would mekadesh the chodesh al pi ha're'iyah, namely we didn't know when Rosh Chodesh is, there wasn't a calendar, there was an actual doubt, they would have done 2 days of Purim because of the doubt, because there's a real doubt. But today, the only reason we do a 2-day Yom Tov is because of minhag avotenu b'yadeinu, to continue the custom of 2 days outside of Israel. We have a calendar. There's no real suffix. So in that situation, namely with the calendar, we only do a 2-day Yom Tov for biblical holidays. However, the Ateret Zekanim, which is a perush on the Shulchan Aruch, written by Rav Menachem Mendel Oibach, his near years 1620 to 1689. He was a Talmud of the Bach in Krakow, was a Dayan there, as well as other cities. He comes along and says in the name of the Re'aim, namely the author of the Yereim, in his Chiddush on the Smag, that, due respect, why don't we have 9 days of Hanukkah? Sha'arei Megilla, and so too with regard to Purim, it should be 2 days. Namely, the fact that it's rabbinic didn't faze him. If that's the case, assuming that it being rabbinic doesn't faze us, why is it we don't have 2 days of Purim? Comes along the Pri Chadash and says, I'll tell you why. If you did, you wouldn't publicize the miracle. You want to publicize the miracle, you have to do it on the date that the miracle happened. If it was 2 days, it would diminish from publicizing the miracle. In his beautiful words, sheyedu b'chivun kama haya hanes. They know exactly when the miracle was. So since we have an obligation to publicize the miracle both on Hanukkah and Purim, there's a localized reason why we don't do 2 days. We want to publicize the miracle that it happened on those days. So Hanukkah, as everybody knows, Chanu Kaf Hey, they eventually rested on the 25th. We want to publicize it Stavka the 25th for 8 days. Then we have to do it only for 8 days. In the Megilla, they stopped fighting on the Yudalit in some places on Tetvav. We have to publicize it's exactly that day. Answer number 3 is the Mordechai, who basically says you should have done 2 days. The fact that it's rabbinic, I don't care, but we have a problem. In the Megillah, it says Velo Ya'avor. You can't go past these days. You can read the Megillah early. Everybody knows that opening Mishnah in Megillah. If you would have paskin, you need to do 2 days. Mishmeret Moadot in the Abud Raham says, Ki lo ya'avor ktiv, she'er shedino likrot b'yom dalet, en lo likrot b'yom tedvav, v'kol shekein, hakorim b'tedvav, en lahem likrot b'yudvav, which we call Tetzayin. And the Ateret Zekanim says this in the name of the Re'aim as well. So to sum up, we should have had 2 days of Purim and Hanukkah like we do for every Yom Tov, but we don't, either because it's only rabbinic and we don't do it for rabbinic holidays, especially when we have a calendar, or because we wanted to publicize the miracle on that day specifically, or because it says in the Megillah you can't go past the right day to read the Megillah. It says Velo Ya'avor, namely it should have happened, but we can't. We're stuck with Velo Ya'avor.